We just have a few announcements before we begin. We'd like to invite you to help us make improvements by providing feedback. We have a survey that we'll share with you at the end of this presentation. Please complete the survey so that we can improve our future presentations. This is your GoToMeeting control panel. You can use the orange arrow to open and close your panel. From the View menu, you can set the control panel to auto-hide when inactive if you prefer to keep it always open. This is your audio pane. This provides audio information. If you prefer today, you can join the audio via telephone by selecting the telephone radio button, and the dial-in information will be displayed below. Today, we're going to be taking questions and answering them at the end of the presentation. Please submit text questions throughout the presentation as you think of them. We have a large number of faculty with us today, and we'd love to be able to answer everyone's question before the end of the presentation. If for some reason we run out of time, we will answer your question via email post the webcast today. If you have any technical difficulties, please submit a question through that same question box on your GoToWebinar control panel, and we'll do our best to assist you. Everyone will receive an email within 48 hours with a link to view a recorded version of today's session. So now let's move on to the presentation, Open Textbooks, Bringing Innovation to Business Programs. Discussing today's topic is Eric Frank, President and co-founder of Flat World Knowledge. Eric has a 13-year track record of success in higher education publishing. He's held positions in sales, editorial, and marketing at Thomson, now Cengage, and at Prentice Hall. Most recently, he was the Director of Marketing for a division of Pearson Education. We also have John Gallaugher. John is an Associate Professor of Information Systems at Boston College's Carroll School of Management. His excellence in the classroom was recently recognized by Business Week, who ranked him as one of the top undergraduate business professors in the country. Professor Gallaugher's research focuses on technology for competitive advantage, electronic commerce, network effects, and global information systems. And finally, I'd like to introduce Dr. Andrew Feldstein. Andrew is an assistant professor of marketing at Virginia State University. Dr. Feldstein led the curriculum task force for the School of Business, which spearheaded a new integrated curriculum as well as a cutting-edge business model for the delivery of digital textbooks. He's also leading the effort to build an online social learning community for the School of Business. Welcome, Andrew, Eric, and John. And I'd like to welcome all of you today from schools around the country, as well as a group of students from Suffolk University today. I'd like to turn over the floor to Eric to begin today's presentation.
Thank you, Sharon, and thanks to everybody for joining. This comment out of recently from BNet, it would be difficult to find a more ossified corner of the media industry than the college textbook sector. Thankfully, there is now a viable alternative to these Pleistocene epic companies and their dinosaur-like business model. Flat World Knowledge is amongst a wave of startups using technology to change the economics of higher education, Business Week. And Outsell, an industry and media analyst group, recently included Flat World Knowledge in a group of 30 innovators to watch, along with Google, Hulu, and numerous others, as they recognize the coming disruption in the college textbook market space. And VentureBeat, a leading source of information in the venture world, recently said that VentureBeat last reported on Flat World Knowledge when it raised $8 million. Since then, it appears it has only gained momentum, with Flat World lowering prices more and giving customers the option to mix and match materials to fit their curricula. It seems like only a matter of time before open source textbooks overtake the market. So something clearly is going on in this higher education textbook space, and what we want to do today is explore what that is. And we want to begin by looking at the opportunity, how the internet is disrupting the industry and creating opportunity for new approaches. Talk about open textbooks as one of those most disruptive new approaches. What are they? And then giving some concrete examples of them. And then we'll move to hear from both a user of open textbooks in Andrew Feldstein and an author of open textbooks in John Gallaugher. So let's dive into the opportunity. I'm going to go on a little bit of a history lesson here. But back in the 80s, textbook publishing was really an academic enterprise. There were about 65 textbook publishers. They acted more like academic enterprises. And in the 80s, they really started to consolidate under a smaller number of corporate owners and to really seek competitive advantage from one another. I think of the 80s as the decade of feet on the street, the rise of bigger, badder, more professional sales organizations, which added a lot of cost to the end product but negligible value to the student, the end user. In the 90s, there's a wave of consolidation, and all that competitive advantage is negated. And so I think of the 90s as the decade of the nuclear arms race of supplements. It became critical for publishers to send those sales organizations into a professor to say, we have some fancy supplement that the other guy doesn't have in order to gain a leg up in the market. And that, of course, adds cost to the product and negligible value to the end user, the student. So when we arrive in the 2000s, we've had this steadily escalating price phenomenon, and we arrive at a place where I think there's a basic value gap in the market, where the book is now priced at a point which is more than the average student is willing to pay for it. And that student, I think, is critical to understand. On one side of that value gap is a student who's more digitally savvy, more wired, more connected, but also importantly, demographically, brings less family income into the university than any generation prior and works more hours than any generation prior to support their ability to be at school. And on the other side of that value gap is this increasingly unaffordable product. If you look at these current prices off of publisher websites for leading introductory market textbooks, you'll see that we really have arrived at the $200 textbook, which will be, I think, the norm and not the exception within the next 24 months across almost every major market. If you look at this over a period of time, what you see is a 20-year timeline of consumer price index or inflation here. On top, you see the rise in the cost of tuition and fees, and here we see the rise in the cost of textbooks. Taken together, this represents a tremendous amount of financial pain for the average college-going student. And the cost of textbooks is sort of a significant pain point when you see it in this light. If you're at a 2-year community college and you're paying X for tuition and fees today, the Department of Education says that you're paying 72% of X for your textbooks, or almost as much for books as you're paying for your education. If you're at a 4-year public institution, you're paying 26% of X. And I don't think anybody can defensively argue that either one of those proportions are reasonable given the value of the textbook relative to the value of everything else that one pays for in one's education. And so as this value gap grew into the 2000s, students became angry and frustrated, and they started to look for an alternative. And this is where the internet really has disrupted the textbook industry. All of a sudden, that angry student turns to the internet and begins to find a substitute. Increasingly, they find a used book as an alternative to purchasing a new book, as new players like Amazon, Half.com, Craigslist, and numerous others make that a much more rational and efficient marketplace and increase the supply of used books. They begin to tap into global gray market titles. So publishers sell books overseas with a different cover and the same contents on the inside at dramatically lower prices. And those have begun to make their way back in waves, massive waves, through internet channels, again, like Amazon, and are displacing the higher priced North American sales. And we've seen the Napsterization of publishing, where students are literally scanning textbooks, creating PDFs, and then illegally distributing them over peer-to-peer architectures. And this has been an exploding problem in the last 2 years. All of this means that publishers are selling less units each year than they were the year prior. And that, of course, is making them nervous about what the future of the business is. Publishers aren't standing still. They're publicly traded companies, and they have a need to preserve revenue even if unit sales are falling. And so what we were generally doing in the industry was, I think, rational, understandable, but also short-term. And so the primary response has been to raise prices faster. We have less customers, but if we charge more for the ones we still have, we can preserve revenue even though our unit sales are declining. And price increases have gone, therefore, from 4 to 5% a year increases to over 10% a year over the last couple of years. It also has become imperative to have a unique ISBN ordered at an institution. If I can get a professor to customize the book, even if it's superficial, or to bundle something unique with the book, like a syllabus or a CD, then I can create an ISBN at that school that is not findable on the internet. It doesn't exist anywhere other than for that individual institution. And therefore, students in bookstores struggle to find lower cost substitutes or alternatives. And finally, everybody's favorite phenomenon, the new edition phenomenon of the author ever increasingly quickly being asked to turn out new editions, which come off the new edition machine at a pace of 2x what they used to a few years ago. So when I started in the business, it was on average 4.5 years between new editions. It's now sub 2 years, and in many introductory markets, it's hit 18 months. That, of course, flushes the market of all those alternatives, but they end up on faculty's desks and create a tremendous amount of frustration as people are updating new notes for the wrong reasons and in essence realizing that they're taking away a lower cost alternative for their students. So in the end, nobody's happy. I think students are frustrated and dissatisfied. I think faculty feel like unwilling participants in a model that's no longer working correctly. And authors are wondering what the future of this business is, where they write the intellectual property, get paid for it one time at best, and then watch it get used over and over again, and they don't get paid for it. And so when you have a value gap that's significant, lots of actors begin to step in. We've seen over 36 states introduce local legislation to try to control textbook pricing, and recently the federal government passed a provision of the Higher Ed Opportunity Act requiring pricing transparency and disclosure. We've seen the slow rise of ebook models like those from CourseSmart or more recently from Cafe Scribe. Most recently, I think we've seen the strong and very aggressive entry of the e-reader market. And each one of these e-readers is both a device, but it's also a bookstore on the internet connected to that device. And so the growing availability of books over devices at different price points and models is beginning to step into that void. And we've seen the rise of rental models, whether they're at the local independent bookstore, through a chain like Barnes & Noble, or through new venture-backed companies like Chegg or bookrenter.com. Increasingly, students are renting their books for a semester. And then finally, we've seen the rise of what I think are really the most important long-term phenomenon, which are the rise of really new publishing models that change the value chain from the author through the faculty member all the way to the student in ways that I think are transformative in the marketplace. And so I think open textbooks really represent the most disruptive model of all of the players stepping into the void. So we're going to start by quickly defining what an open book is, look at some examples of it, and then move on to hear from Andrew and John. So what is open? It's a fundamentally legal term. It's about use rights. So we've lived in a world where materials were primarily, they're copyrighted, and they're primarily distributed under an all rights reserved license. And most of us recognize what that means, which is we have very limited fair use provision rights as to how we're going to use something like a textbook. But if a copyright holder, an author or a publisher, wanted to make their textbook, let's say in this case, available to the user and give them more flexibility, give them more rights, allow them to do more with this material, the only choice that that user, that copyright holder has had historically was to go to the other end of the spectrum and to, in essence, put it in the public domain, which means you've reserved no rights to yourself whatsoever, which has generally been an untenable for most copyright holders. So as the internet has arisen as a more important medium of creation, distribution, and consumption of intellectual property, legal scholars said we need something in the middle. And simply put, that something in the middle is the world of some rights reserved, which is really the world of open. It's still copyrighted. Copyright is held by somebody, but that somebody is making this book, in this case this textbook, available to the public under a loosened copyright restrictions. They're holding some rights for themselves, and they're reserved, and they're giving some rights to their users. So what are the rights that users might get under an open license that are beneficial, that they don't get under an all rights reserved license? Well, the first is the right to reuse something, to copy and use verbatim copies. Literally, whether that's a digital copy or a physical copy, most open licenses allow one to make those copies. And they allow them to redistribute those copies, to legally share those copies with others. I think in some ways the most important new rights are the right to revise and to remix. This is really the right to change things and to build upon what's already been created and to turn it into something better or improved for one's own purposes. And so in the case of a textbook, one can imagine saying, I can take this existing textbook, which has been fully vetted and created, but now I can reorganize it. I could change examples to be more relevant to our local economy, for example. I might make some changes to things to make it more culturally relevant to a particular demographic I teach to. I might just want to put links to readings out there to make the textbook be a platform to hang other things onto. And I can also remix the book, meaning I can take an open textbook and maybe an open simulation or an open case study and put them together to create something of more value for my teaching purposes and my students' learning purposes. So with that, I wanted to talk a little bit about what we do at Flat World Knowledge to bring it all together in a very concrete way so that you can see what's possible when you apply the concepts of openness, concepts of sustainable business models to publishing textbooks. And so our primary business model at Flat World Knowledge really runs across the value chain of authors, faculty, and students. And it has three core components. The first is to build really high-quality textbooks. The second is to make them available under an open license and open model. And the third is to generate revenue by providing students with a tremendous number of choices that they generally don't have in the marketplace today. So by quality, what I mean is we really don't change the way we publish a textbook from the way the industry has historically done it. We think it works. So we think going out, finding a leader in his or her field who's an expert, who's recognized by their peers, and getting them to write an exclusive textbook for Flat World Knowledge leads to high-quality textbooks. We further professionally develop them the way any good publisher would do that, which is extensive peer review, editorial development, professional illustration, and all of the sort of publishing services that a publisher brings to bear to take a good idea and a great author and turn it into a highly marketable textbook. And we support our textbooks with key supplements like test banks for learning management systems, instructors' manuals, print desk copies, PowerPoint slides, some of the things that are basic to adopting a new textbook. So all of that puts us on the playing field where we really this just demonstrates some of the users today of Flat World Knowledge textbooks, and I use these to say I think they're at least indicative of the fact that we're producing quality materials that some of the best institutions in the country have said are acceptable in their curriculums. Where we change the model completely is we publish the book under an open model. So it's under a Creative Commons open license, transferring those 4 R's to the user as I described. And we provide a platform, a technology platform to act easy to make the kinds of changes one might want to make. And so you could use a book as it is, of course, it's done and ready for the marketplace. Or one could say, I would like to customize this book. And so this is an example of a catalog for Introduction to Business. And one can click Customize and begin to do things like reorganize. So I can grab and move chapters or individual sections anywhere else in the book where I would want them covered. I could delete things. If I don't cover this section, I can just simply delete it from the book at a click. I can add annotations for students. So I can go into a section of a book. I can open up an annotation box, type in some notes to my students, and go ahead and save them. And that note will be demarcated as different from the original work, credited to me as the contributor, and will be available to my students in all of the formats that the book is available in, which we'll talk about momentarily. That's all available today, and coming in literally 5 weeks from now is the next wave of tools available for customization. The ability to insert new chapters or sections of material, whether that's a document that you have on your desktop or an open module or chapter you might find from somewhere else on the internet, and put them wherever you want into the book, and to edit right down to the word level anywhere in the existing book. So by clicking Edit and going to a section of the book that you want to edit, you can edit any of the objects in that section. you can edit the title, the learning objectives. I could go into any paragraph and open up that paragraph inside of an editor and go ahead and add to it, delete, modify, etc. to make it what I want it to be for my class. I can also insert new items between paragraphs. So if I wanted to insert a new paragraph, I could do that and use the editor to type out that new paragraph. And I think very tellingly about where the future is going, I can insert multimedia easily into the book. So if I had a video that I wanted to integrate into the book and have my students see, I could insert video, put a title, add a URL where that video is on Flip TV or YouTube, and describe that video for my students and add a citation which will appear in our citation list at the end of the chapter. And by going ahead and saving it, that video player and your description, title, etc. will render directly in the book where you inserted it for your students to be able to see online. And if they were offline in a print version of the book, they would see that this video is here and they would see a URL where they could go to watch it. Our publishing engine basically takes all those changes and rebuilds the book on the fly. So when you say, I'm done, publish this book for my students, our system will rebuild the book, meaning we generate a new table of contents, a linear table of contents, regenerate the index to update all the page references to be correct, add linear pagination to the book, renumber the figures, etc. We then dynamically generate the book in a whole bunch of formats. We are platform agnostic. We're not a digital publisher. We're not a print publisher. We're just a publisher who makes books available in a whole number of formats at the same time. So we automatically generate a web-based textbook in an internet browser. We generate printed books. We generate print-it-yourself files, PDFs that can be downloaded. Books for mobile readers like iPads or Kindles, audiobooks, and accessible books for those who have print disabilities in formats like Daisy readable versions and digital Braille versions. And then all of those formats are made available to the student to come in and choose from. And we'll talk about the business model behind that in just 1 minute. This is an example of a textbook that was created at the University of New Hampshire, who started with that Introduction to Business book and then added 2 additional chapters into the book. The lead professor there, Ross Cattell, is an expert in sustainability and social responsibility for corporations. And so he added Chapter 3 on business, government, and public policy and Chapter 4 on sustainability and business. And you can see they're thoroughly integrated into the book. They look exactly like the rest of the content that Flat World initially provided, and now their course is being taught with the emphasis that they want. How do we make money? We are a venture capital-backed company. There's an expectation that we will be a profitable company into the future. And so what we do is we provide the student with choices. One choice is a free online book. It is literally that HTML web-hosted textbook, fully featured, available at no cost to the student if they so choose to read free online. And that's both the web-hosted HTML version and those accessible versions I mentioned for those with print disabilities. Both are made available 100% free to a student, obviously a disruptive price point. The way we make money is by providing choices to students around free at affordable prices. So what we know about students is that they actually continue to express an interest in formats outside of online formats. And if they're priced correctly, we'll still buy them. So for example, students can buy soft cover textbooks in black and white for $30 or color for $60 directly from our website or through the bookstore at their local campus, who typically orders textbooks from us to have on the shelves. And they can purchase audiobooks by the book or by the chapter for download to an audio player, PDF books by the book or by the chapter for local handling and putting on devices or printing, e-reader versions for their iPad, Kindle, Sony Reader, or any other number of e-readers that are available today, and an iPhone version for students who prefer to read off of their phone in small snippets. And then we also sell study aids, audio study guides, quizzes, flashcards, etc. What we find is that over 55% of the students who are in a class using a Flat World book choose to buy an alternative format to the free online version because of the affordable options for them. So a student's experience, in essence, is to come to our site, find their course, and then see the various options of that book, whether it's the original book or a customized version that are available to them. And they, as you can see here, the message really is your professor chooses the book, and you, as the student, get to choose the format and price that works for you. I'll briefly mention a secondary business model because it's relevant to something that Andrew Feldstein will talk about at Virginia State. But in addition to the model I just described, which is reflected here, we also offer an institutional license model. In essence, same books, same open license and platform available, but when one is ready to provide it to students, rather than students coming in and individually opting to pick one format or another, the institution has purchased a site license for that student at $20 or less. And in exchange, when that student logs into the course, every format of the book and study aids that we make available in our shopping cart is available to them, so that they can pick and choose from different formats that are convenient for them as they go through the semester. As regard print in that model, we typically offer print as a individual upsell. If they want to choose to buy a print book, we'll ship it to them, or we'll sell print rights to a bookstore who's able to print on demand locally and fulfill print orders on demand. And so that's a very different model, but we see that starting to gain momentum across institutions who are interested in solving this textbook affordability problem and providing maximum value for students. I think the benefits are pretty clear. Authors, I'll defer and let John Gallaugher talk about that since he chose to author an open textbook. But I'm happy to answer questions about that later, and we have over 100 leading authors under contract today. I think for faculty, the benefits are to maintain the quality that they expect from the textbook industry today, but to increase the level of control they have over the content that they're using and over things like the timing of when and if they want to move from an old edition to a newer edition. The ability to take this and integrate it much more thoroughly into learning management systems and other online platforms. And of course, you're solving the affordability and access problem for your students. We have over 1,300 faculty who've individually adopted Flat World Knowledge textbooks today at over 800 colleges and universities. And of course, for students, free access is opening up a level playing field for those who have the brains but not the resources to be as successful as others. Affordable choices to make sure that they're not forced into a digital workflow when they prefer print or audio or some other format. Immediacy of content. If they register the day before a class, it's available to them immediately and they don't fall behind waiting to get access to a book. Predictability of cost, which gets much lower and enables them to do better financial planning to be able to stay in school. And potentially greater success. We have some early case studies of course completion rates going up between 10 and 15% in courses where open textbook has been adopted and the barrier of textbook cost has been removed. And so today, in this academic year, we'll serve over 150,000 students with Flat World's open textbooks. A quick note about bookstores. Where do they fit into the mix? Well, I think, number one, they fit into the standard model. Today, more than half of our revenue is generated by bookstores placing orders for print books and making them available for students. We offer a discount to the bookstore so that they can mark up and sell the book for a comparable price as it's available on our website. But also, I think, interestingly and more important going forward is that the bookstore model is under tremendous pressure. And this comment by Mark Nelson, VP of Strategy for the National Association of College Stores, I think says a lot, which is these exciting, we've launched print-on-demand pilot programs with 20 university bookstores this semester. So when a student orders a print book, the university print-on-demand apparatus kicks in. They print the book locally. The student can pick it up within a few hours. And it's a great model for everybody involved, including the environment. And so what Mark said is these exciting pilot programs address the need to help the college store channel expand essential services at a time when educational content is evolving. I think it's a great opportunity for bookstores and publishers to partner together under a new model that's actually beneficial not only to the publisher and the bookstore, but also to the customer. I'll finish with a quick anticipation of a question many people hear when they have in their minds when they hear about the model, which is, what's the catch? And there really is no catch. We're out to make money. We're out to build a profitable business. But the way we do that is just different than the traditional business. If you think about a single professor adopting a book and using it over a 4 or 5 or 6 semester period, which is pretty typical, and let's assume 100 students in that professor's course. In the traditional model, what happens is about 60 students purchase the book, 65 at most. In the first semester, a new edition is available, and then it plummets off of a cliff based on the availability of used books, pirated copies, shared copies, and everything else that I described earlier. The Flat World model, we see about 55 students purchasing, and they're albeit purchasing at a lower price point. They average $34 per transaction, where this average transaction is around $100 for a traditional publisher. But over time, what happens is we continue to sell pretty consistently with some small attrition from one semester to the next, meaning by the time we reach that 5th semester, we've sold a lot more volume of units over that adoption at a lower price point and come almost even, not quite, with the revenue that would be generated by a traditional publisher. Our profitability is higher because we're automating a lot of our publishing processes and dramatically lowering the cost of sales because we're actually really adding value to customers who are adopting it without needing a sales rep knocking on their door. And our authors make out better because we apply a 20% royalty to their earnings versus an average of 12% in the industry. And so our authors actually walk away with more income in their pockets. Flat World walks away with a more profitable business, and the customer, of course, walks away with a much better value. And so with that, I'm going to turn things over to Dr. Andrew Feldstein from Virginia State University to talk a little bit about their experience using open textbooks at Virginia State. And so, Andrew?
Good afternoon. I want to thank you for giving me the opportunity to talk a little bit about the adventure we had here at Virginia State as we went about looking for alternate ways to deliver content to students. And in fact, what we were doing was looking not so much as a replacement for textbooks, but simply as an alternate way to deliver content to students. We had a vision in mind where we would be able to take textbook content, specific textbook content, and through a learning management system that we're creating, a dynamic system, we would be able to allow people to allow professors to take single chapters of a textbook, deliver it within a unit assignment so that students could connect directly to that content. We were also hoping to be able to do some custom things that Eric was referring to a little bit earlier, such as having current video content that might be very, very relevant to a topic we would be discussing that we would be able to integrate with the material. Our main goal, again, was the integration of material. At the time, Flat World was not even on our radar. We started talking with all of the major publishers, sharing with them the vision of what it was we were looking to accomplish. And we talked to them about the ability to be more flexible with the content, and we talked to them about potentially having a video bank of different TED videos or other types of videos that would be relevant, that could be provided and made available to faculty talking about a specific unit. And we talked for quite a long time with each of the publishers, and it became an increasingly frustrating experience. And I guess part of that frustration was that we were asking them to do things that they weren't comfortable doing. We didn't necessarily understand that at the time, but every time we would talk to them and share our vision, they would say, okay, wow, this is great. We need to think about this a little bit. We'll get back to you. And they would come back, and inevitably they would say, here's what we think you're looking for. We think this is something that's going to be able to provide a really terrific solution. And what they came back with, the analogy I used was that We gave them a recipe for lasagna, and they came back with pizza or something along those lines. It just didn't look at all like what we were looking for. When a flat world text literally landed on my desk, I was at the point in the process where I understood that the major issue that many of the publishers were having at that point was connected to the fact that their content was proprietary. And the fact that their content was proprietary meant that they were not able to be as flexible with it as we wanted that content to be. And so as soon as I saw that the Flat World material was on a Creative Commons license, the possibilities really jumped out at me, because I realized at that point that we would be able to do the things that we were looking to do, because since the course, since the texts are Creative Commons, you can take pieces of that text and pretty much do with it what you want, which meant that we would be able to take that material and parse it as we wanted to within chapters, and also give students the type of accessibility to the material that they'd never had before. And by accessibility, I don't mean ebooks. And you'll see that when articles came out, and there was this article came out, there was another article that came out in the Chronicle talking about how we were using ebooks. But the fact is, ebooks are not the solution. They weren't what we were looking for. We wanted students to have the ability to have access to the material however they wanted that access. So we used the seat license model that Eric was referring to, where students, if they had a Kindle or a Kindle app on their PC or a Kindle app on their smartphone, they would be able to take that material and have it available to them whenever they wanted. They'll also be able to take PDFs of the chapters in the books and have that available when and where they needed them. In some of the courses we're using, MP3s are also available so that they can download them on iTunes and have access that way. So there's a lot of flexibility that the Flat World model is presenting, and this flexibility worked right in with the model that we were looking to put together. And that, in a nutshell, is where we started. We're in our first semester with this, and what you see on the screen now is this is how we had the students register for their seat license. They chose their course from a drop-down menu. They signed in, they registered, and had instant access not only to, again, to viewing the textbook online, but they had instant access to all the files that were available, including the PDFs, the Mobi files for Kindles, iPub files for iBooks, or any other type of online viewing. And it's going pretty well so far. I won't say that everyone got it right away. That includes students and faculty, but people are, as the semester goes on, people are asking questions, people are discovering all of the possibilities that are available through this model, and I think that as we move forward from semester to semester, we're going to find something that's going to be extremely powerful in helping us to deliver content to our students as part of an integrated course as opposed to just a standalone textbook.
That's great. Thank you very much, Andrew, for sharing your experience at Virginia State. Now I'm going to turn it over to John Gallaugher from Boston College to talk about sort of why would anybody write an open textbook from an author's point of view. And so with that, John, I'm going to give you the controls and let you drive and tell your story.
Great. Thanks very much, Eric, and thanks to everybody for joining us today for the podcast here, and I'm ready to start driving. Greetings from my big bald head. It's nice that you've all joined us today. I'm a Flat World author for the Text Information Systems Manager's Guide to Harnessing Technology. And you'll see that there's a bunch of contact information in the lower right-hand corner. I think one of the interesting things about authoring a textbook today is there's lots of ways to continue to share information with adopters of your text and also to hear great ideas from them. So if you visit the website listed, there's an opportunity to see a blog post where I put supplemental material out. There's a Ning community where you can participate. There's a Twitter feed. And so not only am I able to share some information, but I'm also able to hear a lot back from other folks, too, in terms of examples that really resonate and things that I can incorporate into subsequent versions of the book. So that works out well. Feel free to check that out and to share that widely. In terms of who I am and you know, where I'm coming from to author this, whoops, I'm just getting used to using the keyboard. Sorry about that. So I'm a tenured research faculty member at Boston College. Business Week has been very kind to our university in terms of the rankings. I've published in our leading scholarly journal, our leading managerial journal. Before going and getting my PhD, I was a software developer for a Fortune 50 firm in industry where I wrote and actually led teams of software developers for enterprise-wide systems. I also teach at the undergrad, grad, and executive levels, and the text that we've created, we're using in our core class, both at the undergraduate level and the grad level. My exec clients you see from Accenture to Staples down there too. And I also have the very good fortune to lead field studies, both to Silicon Valley and Seattle to tech industry firms in the United States, as well as abroad to Bangalore, Seoul, Beijing, Taipei, and others. It just sort of gives you an idea of the perspective that I bring to the project. During the past decade, we've really faced a number of challenges, particularly in information systems, but in a number of management disciplines, I think that we get cyclical struggles. In IS, our enrollments were plummeting, student interest was very low, the material seemed out of date, it wasn't engaging, it was less practical, and there really, across managerial disciplines, has been this assault of the new. If we think about what's happened in the past decade, I mean, there have been a startling number of changes. Google, about a decade ago, didn't have any revenue, and today it has more revenue from advertising and more profits from advertising than any other firm on the planet. Facebook is changing the way we communicate. LinkedIn is changing the way that HR managers think about employee outreach, retention, hiring. Netflix has proven that a .com can not only disrupt Blockbuster, but also repel Fortune 1 and Walmart. Apple was left for dead, and now they're the #2 firm in terms of market capitalization. Salesforce.com is a tech firm that says that they're not about software, but they provide software as a service. And that's important because now you've got small and medium-sized businesses that have access to world-class enterprise software using this model. Now, the situation that we face in the classroom, I've been teaching for 14 years. The first year we used a very well-known text that also had a bunch of supplemental cases from a well-known provider of business cases. And we also supplemented that with a course packet from the managerial press that my students will read after they graduate from the program. Uniformly, students didn't like the text, and they really liked the course pack. But the problem that I have with course packs is that there would be a nugget of really good information in an article that might have been out 2 or 3 years ago, and the rest of that article was stale. I always wanted to write a textbook, but the conventional models didn't work. And then Flat World came along, and I was delighted to be approached by Eric and Jeff. First and most important for me is that Flat World offers very fast updates. In the domain of information systems, this is critical. When you think about what's happened with respect to social media and information system security with Google and Facebook and a number of the other firms that we cover, a lot happens in a year. And as the author of my last of the last edition 1.1, I finished that in June of this year, and it was available in print and in online by mid-July. So, within a month that they had the version available in consumption in the different Flat World formats. Open access is also extremely disruptive. If I were to write a conventional textbook for the $180, $200 price for the hardback version, it would be very difficult for me to get quick adoption. The switching costs for faculty to go from one book to another, they're just very high. But when everything is open, faculty have been able to say, oh, hey, we would like to have a chapter on social media or on cloud computing. They can send students to sample it. And I've been delighted to hear that faculty have found that they've gotten the best feedback from the semester from some of this material, and it's a catalyst for adoption, which is just great. Faculty are able to share information. Students uncover this stuff and share it with faculty members as well. And finally, there's this issue of value. I was a first-generation college student, and it's very personal to me that we can do some things to lower the cost of education and to continue to make education more accessible. And the sort of soundbite that I use is that the cost of the black and white softback version of the text is essentially dinner and dessert at an Applebee's at $29.95. It's cheaper than rentals. It's cheaper than sellback. And So there's been a tremendous uptick in just the first year. I mean, it's been adopted far greater than I had expected. The results that we've seen at BC, what's nice too is that Flat World provides us with a format to have a bigger impact. I mean, as a researcher, it's nice to have success with research, but frankly, it takes so long to write research, so long for it to appear on the market, and really, a lot of that stuff is only read by other academics. Here's a chance to be able to, gather and share what's worked with us and to really have an impact on the discipline. We've seen, since we've reworked our core, our undergraduate enrollments are up fourfold in 4 years. Even though we've had a recession, employers are raving about the preparedness of our students. We have employers from consulting, from tech industries, from the Fortune 500 coming. We even have entrepreneurship in bloom on campus. So we've had 3 students in 2 years get funding and head to Silicon Valley. TechCrunch covered WePay just yesterday, one of my former students as well. So we've got real strong results from this, and it allows me to share that with everyone, which is just wonderful. So thanks for listening in on this, and again, you're welcome to reach out to me if you'd like to, if you have any questions. And if you send me an email, you might get a message that says that I'm not responding to email because I've got a repetitive stress injury, but I'll be sure to reply. I use voice software for that. So thanks again.
Thank you very much, John. With that, we kind of come to the conclusion of the presentation part of the day. And so I'll conclude and we'll talk about process. I think in conclusion, I just want to end with this notion that I fully believe that knowledge and access to it, both formal and informally, is the black gold of the 21st century, that those with access to knowledge and education will continue to improve their standards of living, and those without will continue to fall further and further behind. And I think the technology here represented by the Internet is offering us an ability to disseminate and to engage in information and knowledge and education sharing on a scale that is absolutely unprecedented at any time in history. And I think 25 years from today, we'll look back at today and say it was just a very, very beginning of the kinds of things that are possible. But I think that technology really does open up the possibility of access to knowledge, information, and education to anybody who wants it worldwide in the coming decades. And it's really not technology that's the problem. It's old business models that are predating the Internet, that are really built on scarcity versus abundance, and that are trying to build up high walls around things to preserve price, as opposed to thinking about new ways to exploit abundance and build sustainable business models that are good for the business but also good for society. So I hope that as open textbooks make their way in front of faculty, they begin to recognize that the opportunity is really now to embrace change, to embrace market-based change, and to solve this problem that we have in front of us and live up to the opportunity that's there as well. And so with that, I'll mention that we have a case study written about flat world knowledge by a business professor at the University of Wisconsin. Naturally, it's under a Creative Commons license, and it will be made available to everybody in an email that you'll get after the webinar. When you get the email saying that the recording of the webinar is ready, there'll also be a link to a Word document you can download, modify as appropriate, but if you're interested in using a case study in your classrooms, you'll have the material available to you to do so. With that, we're going to move to questions that have been asked online. We've got about, by my watch here, about 9 minutes to do that. The way we usually do this, Kelly McDonald will moderate and direct questions to one of the 3 of the speakers, and we'll go until we feel like people want to drop off. So at 12:30, if anybody wants to or needs to leave, please feel free. Don't feel like you're being rude. We asked for an hour of your time, and you gave it. But if we're still answering questions for those who wish to remain on, we'll do so for a few additional minutes until we get through those questions. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to you, Kelly, to take us through the questions.
Sure, I can jump in here for a moment. We've got a bunch of different questions coming in. We're going to summarize some of them and combine like questions. If you have additional questions, you can use your answer pane or your question pane and submit them. I'd like to start out with a question about bookstores. Can my bookstore sell Flat World books?
I guess I'll take that one. So the answer is absolutely yes. We have relationships and contracts in place with Barnes & Noble, with Follett's, with the National Association of College Stores, and there's a tab on our website if one goes there for bookstores. Any bookstore in the world can order a Flat World Knowledge textbook. They can do it at a discount off of the publicly available price so that they can purchase it at a lower price, add a margin on top of that, and still sell that book for the same price that we're selling it for on our website, or higher if they so choose. And we offer some returns policies and things that enable them to return books that they don't sell at the end of the semester. So absolutely, bookstores are able to order and do order books from Flat World Knowledge.
Great. We also have a question about royalties and authors. Did I hear the royalty rate is 20%? Any information on average profit per book, or how the royalty rate compares to other companies?
I'll start that, and John, feel free to jump in if you want. In fact, there's probably a little graphic down here that's might be of some use, which I'll jump to answer that. The royalty rate of 20% is stacked up against an industry average of about 12 to 13% for authors. If I return to my sort of unit sales analysis here of a traditional unit sales over some period of time and Flat World unit sales over that same period of time, each of us, the traditional publisher, will pay a 12% royalty on all of the units sold here, and Flat World will pay a 20% royalty on all of the units sold here. So if you start to look at the model for authors, in the traditional model, the author earns most of their royalties in the first semester, because what's happening after that is they're declining precipitously in terms of the number of new titles that they're selling. At Flat World, we earn a lot less at the beginning because we're selling less books at a lower price, albeit at a higher royalty rate. But over time, as Flat World continues to sell a consistent number of units each semester, there comes a point where, at least theoretically in the models, our authors will surpass the royalties earned by the traditional, if they had published that book under the traditional model. The reason I say theoretically is our books haven't been in the market long enough yet to have gotten to this point, but we're tracking there. I think on books that were published first in the spring of 2009. So that's my response. John, did you have anything that you would like to add?
Sure. I know that there are some efforts out there. Faculty are giving books away for free or trying to consolidate free books. I really think having a royalty structure with open is very, very important. It provides the incentive for faculty to continue to author and to continue to update. And without that, there are just so many other pressures that faculty feel from conventional research, from consulting opportunities, and those kinds of things. And what was great about Flat World 2 is that there was demand for the book. We put some samples out there for a beta version even before we had the real version. So I had a beta version which was available based on initial demand that we had. And then we had a version 1.0 which was available in January of last year, and a version 1.1 which was really a full update over the summer with some new chapters. And these royalty checks started coming through throughout the course when, frankly, I didn't feel the book was done. But we had an outlet. The adoptions continued to skyrocket. This flywheel of faculty that adopting and sharing with other faculty really worked for us. And so now I have this opportunity where I feel like I'm having a big impact on the field. We've got 3 of the top 6 IS programs have adopted the book in one way or another. And yet there's still the financial incentive for me to spend time making sure that I have a high-quality book. So it's been much better than I'd imagined, and I'm really excited about the balance that we have. So that I feel that I'm doing good for the discipline, but also I'm being fairly compensated as an author.
Great. I want to move on to some additional questions. We had a couple questions for authoring, and I've sort of had lumped those together, but I think John and Eric, you did a good job answering those. We also have some questions about the percentage of students who view the book online, what percentage of them roughly purchase a hard copy, and a couple of other questions just wanting information on the different formats and student choices.
Sure. So obviously this is, I'll reference the sort of standard model that I described earlier, because in the licensing model it's very different. But in the standard model, we see about 55% of students choose to pay for a format of the book other than the free online version. And about 45% are accessing the free online version only. So that's the top level separation is 55 payers, 45 free users. Of the 55% who are paying, let's take that pool. About 70% of them are buying a printed textbook. And of those, almost all of them are buying the black and white book at 30. We have very few students who opt to pay for the color book at 60, which tells you something, I think, about the elasticity of demand. They really do see a difference between $30 and $60. And of the other, so if 70% of the payers buy a print book, most of them black and white. Of the other 30% today, it's predominantly the download of PDF files at the whole book level. And then the rest of our purchases are made up of a smaller amount of ebook purchases, e-reader purchases, I should say, and disaggregated PDF sales at the chapter level or audio books. I think that the e-reader part of the market, we just launched this fall, and so it's very early days for that. Estimates are that only about 8% of students own a dedicated e-reader today, but that will be doubling and tripling over the coming couple of years. So I think time will tell on that. But we see print as being here for some time to come as the market sort of slowly shakes out other ways of reading.
Great. Eric, there's a couple follow-up questions. People have added some questions that expand on that a little bit. And one of them is about the per-seat license that you referenced during the webcast. Somebody was actually looking online to see if they could find information on our website. You want to say just a short couple words about that, and also where they can get additional information if that's something they're interested, and then a couple other follow-up questions when you're done with that.
Sure, yeah. Unfortunately, we don't have information yet on our site. It's been a model that we've been mostly talking about on a very sort of individual basis with campuses, faculty, administrators. That will probably change pretty soon. But basically, again, what we're doing there is, in essence, engaging in a relationship with the institution or part of the institution. So in the case of Virginia State, it was with the College of Business. And the College of Business said, we'll pay you, Flat World Knowledge, $19.95 per enrolled student. And so they tally up the number of students post the add-drop period and say that's the number of users, and that therefore we need a license for each user. And that license enables that student to access all of the textbook materials and digital study aids in all of the formats that we talked about for that course for that semester. So it's really $20 per student per semester, and we don't care if that course uses one book, 2 books, 3 books, blends 3 books together to make 1 book. We're just really saying it's a $20 fee to access the material for that 1 semester, and you get it all, student, and you get to choose and mix and match from the formats that are appropriate for you. Now, Virginia State, I think the plan today, they just wanted to break the cycle of something that they estimated to be over 50% of students not purchasing textbooks because of cost. And so the president of the university kicked in the money to pay for the first batch of seat licenses. But the intent going forward is to, in essence, build that into the tuition structure so that the student is paying a much lower amount per year to cover all of their textbook costs as they are able to use more open textbooks across the curriculum. There is a partners page or a partners link on our website if you scout around the home page. And if you click that, you'll get in touch with our kind of business development person who would be the best person to have a licensing discussion with, and then we sort of approach each situation uniquely.
We have had a few other questions come in about the licensing, so I think there is interest in that kind of information. So that will be something we can follow up with people.
The other thing I could do is I'd be happy to just give you an email address directly, and if you have questions about that, let me just add it to here. And instead of sales at Flat World, let me just do this. And you can just send me an email directly, I'd be happy to have that first conversation, try to figure out what you're trying to do, and we can just talk about whether there's a good fit there and some possibilities. So feel free to email me directly.
I'd also like to put in a question for the libraries. We've got several people from libraries that posted a question more about if a library buys a chapter, could a library buy a chapter for $1.99, and then could they add it to the course reserves? What's the issue about copyright permission? But more generally, the question is, what role are libraries playing in institutional licensing and spreading the information about open textbooks to different faculty?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think, first of all, to answer the concrete part of that, yes, libraries can purchase a book or a part of the book and make it available on reserve. It's available for redistribution, so they can do that. The broader question of libraries' involvement in this is very interesting. I mean, I think libraries have a long tradition, in my opinion, I'm not an expert on libraries, but a long tradition of providing access to knowledge. Traditionally, that access has been to knowledge that assists researchers in conducting research, and that may increasingly include students, undergraduates, and graduates doing research, but in the end it was sort of research-oriented information and knowledge. And I think increasingly libraries, because of that, have moved into the world of open access earlier than in many other parts of the campus. A lot of journals have moved into open access models, and also licensing models and repositories of content. So in many ways, the libraries sort of sit at the vanguard of new ways of thinking about accessing and distributing knowledge. As a result, I think that they're very interested in and actively participating in this sort of spreading the word about and engaging in a dialogue on campus about the growth of educational resources that are open, textbooks that are open, and other teaching materials. So specifically, I think they're playing a role in spreading the word in a fairly effective way, although I think libraries sometimes feel challenged by moving into a new place, and a place that's been traditionally solely occupied by faculty. And so they're treading carefully, but I think spreading the word. But I think also, interestingly, we're engaged in a number of conversations with library systems about playing a central role in that licensing model. And it's probably too complicated to get into here, but if there are folks that are operating libraries or working at libraries interested in talking more about that, we're in a learning mode right now about libraries' both interests and capacity to participate in the licensing value chain, and it's becoming pretty clear that there is a role there for some libraries. So that's kind of a long answer.
Great. That was a great answer in that regard. There's some questions about customization. This is actually a very good question. What's the process by which I take all the customization, additional chapters, et cetera, and apply it to the latest edition of a book, such as John Gallaugher, who's issued a later 1.1 version? How does that process happen? And there was also another question I'll lump in here that has to do with when people customize their books, will other faculty members have access to that?
Okay, so let me answer both of those. I'll start with the second one quickly. So today, if you customize a book, it's available really at a URL for your course or your students. If you shared that URL with a colleague, then he or she could adopt the version that you created, and they could use that book and their students could purchase it. Moving forward, in February of 2011, on our development roadmap, we're releasing what we kind of internally call Catalog 2.0. And that's the idea that once you've made customizations, at the end of that process, you'll have the explicit choice to either preserve them as private modifications for your course or to make them publicly available for others to be able to see and adopt. And the way that will manifest itself is that when one goes to our catalog and, say, searches for information systems, sees John Gallaugher, there's version 1.1 is the canonical version or the parent version now, but there'll be an exposure of here are all of the publicly shared derivatives of Gallaugher's book that are available for perusal. And you'll be able to click and see descriptions of them. Hey, we teach this, but we teach with a real security emphasis, so we've added chapters and sections on this and that. And you'll be able to then click in and evaluate that book. and ultimately choose whether to adopt the parent book or the derivative. As regards payment of royalties in that scenario, John would always earn his full 20% of royalties, even on the derived book, because we want our authors to not be feeling competitive with people who are making modifications, but to feel like that's a good thing for them. And that person who made the derivative would be able to be paid a royalty, and we're working out the exact model, if the book were adopted and purchases were made outside of one's own institution. So if you do it for your own course, no royalties will be earned, because we think that's a perverse incentive. But if there are adoptions and sales outside of your institution, then we will pay a royalty on top of the original author royalty. The second part of that question, or second question, was let's say I made changes to John Gallaugher's 1.1, and now I have my own flavor of it. We'll call it 1.1.ef for Eric Frank. And John comes out with a version 2.0 in a year. How do my changes make their way to version 2.0? And that's been the hardest technology problem to solve, and probably the most important one that we have solved. So without going into technical detail, we've been able to tie the parent version together to every derivative that's made of it. So in that case, John would publish 2.0, and you would get a message as the user that says, hey, John's published 2.0. Here's a report, in essence what we call a delta report, of all the differences between John's 2.0 and the revision, the derivative you made of his 1.1. And you'll have some choices. Would you like to just take 2.0? Would you like to just forget about it and keep going with your version 1.1.ef? Or would you like to see where the conflicts are and basically resolve the conflicts individually, so that you get to opt to say, hey, I like what he did in that new paragraph, I'm going to take his, or you know what, I like what I did, I'm going to keep mine. And so we're releasing that in February as well, at the same time that Catalog 2.0 comes out.
Great. There was another question, and we probably have time for just about one more. There's another question about integration of video. Can you describe a little bit how that will work, and also are there plans for video segments a la Khan Academy?
That's a great question. So today we include some video in our parent books increasingly frequently. So you'll find video player in books with delivery of either relevant videos that illustrate something, or maybe an author doing a video explaining a topic. And as far as the adapter being able to integrate video, initially when we launched this in 5 weeks, one will be able to integrate videos that are on YouTube or on Blip TV. Or if you have your own video, you could upload it to either YouTube or Blip TV. And then link to, put a URL there, which will pull that video and the YouTube or Blip TV player into our book. And so those two formats will be the two formats initially available. And then we'll keep adding additional video formats that one will be able to pull in. The question about Khan Academy is a great one, which is there's thousands of really interesting videos on lots of different academic topics in places like Khan Academy, or Academic Earth is another good example. The real issue there will be licensing. So where we have compatible licensing, and it's therefore legal for us to pull in a video, we'll be able to start expanding the libraries of videos available for easy search and integration. And where licensing is not compatible, we won't. And I think in the case of Khan Academy today, licensing is not yet compatible unless we reach an agreement with Khan Academy. But I think we would like to identify increasingly large libraries of video with compatible licensing and make them available for people to be able to search, find, and easily integrate. Not available today, however.
Great. I think that's about where we're going to close and end off today. There were a couple questions we were not able to get to, but in respecting people's time, we'll try and answer those offline, or you can reach out to us directly after the webcast. As a reminder, everyone who is registered for the webcast will get a link to the recording afterwards. We encourage you and welcome you sharing that with other colleagues. We find that more than half of our Flat World Knowledge users have first found out about Flat World Knowledge not necessarily through our channels, but directly from a colleague. And so we take your efforts to spread different information about open textbooks. We appreciate that and certainly encourage that and happy to help in any way that we can. So with that, Eric, do you want to close with just a comment or two? And we'll sign off.
Just to say thank you very much for your time, and hopefully this was of interest. Hopefully you learned something you didn't know when you came, which always makes it a better day. And to the degree that this is, in your view, a solution to a problem that you see out there, we always welcome any kind of advocacy on behalf of the model. We don't field hundreds of sales reps. We don't intend to. And so spreading of the word from peer to peer remains one of the most essential ways that the word gets out. And so if you get the recorded webcast and share it with colleagues, are interested in having us come to your campus and present, or do a more specific local webinar like this for your colleagues, we welcome all of the help that we can get in spreading the word about open textbooks. So thank you very much, and have a great day.
Thank you.